The phone rang 18 times in 2 days. I counted every single one. But let me start at the beginning because every good story needs context. And this one? Well, this one changed everything. I was standing in Michael's driveway on December 23rd, my arms loaded with wrapped presents and 2 tins of snickerdoodles that were still warm from my oven. The Christmas lights on his house twinkled like tiny stars, and I could hear Emma and Tommy's laughter from inside. 23 years I'd been making this drive, same route, same excitement bubbling in my chest like I was 8 years old again. Then Michael walked out. I knew that look. Every mother knows that look. It's the same expression he wore when he was 12 and had to tell me he'd broken Mrs. Henderson's window with his baseball. Guilty. Apologetic. Dreading what came next. "Mom," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Listen, about Christmas dinner tomorrow." I waited. The presents suddenly felt heavier in my arms. "Jessica thinks. Well, we both think maybe it's better if you don't come this year." The words hung in the December air like icicles. Sharp. Cold. Ready to fall and shatter. "Too much drama," he continued, his voice getting smaller. "She says you overwhelm the kids with all the gifts and attention. We want a quiet family Christmas this year. A quiet family Christmas. Without the grandmother who'd raised him when his father walked out. Without the woman who'd driven 3 hours every holiday for over 2 decades. Without me." Something clicked in my brain then. Not anger, exactly. More like clarity. Like when you've been looking at one of those optical illusion pictures, and suddenly you see what was hidden all along. I smiled. Really smiled. The kind of smile that comes from a place of perfect, crystalline understanding. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, setting the presents down on his porch with careful precision. "I understand completely." I kissed his cheek, got in my car, and drove home. The entire 3-hour drive, I thought about one thing. That mortgage payment I'd been making for 8 years. The one for $2,847 that came out of my account every month like clockwork. The one they had no idea I was making. 8 years ago, Michael was drowning. His first marriage was falling apart, his credit was shot, and the bank was ready to foreclose on the house where my grandchildren slept every night. Emma was only 3 then, Tommy barely walking. The thought of those babies losing their home, their stability, their neighborhood, it kept me awake at night. So I did what any grandmother would do. I called the bank. "I'd like to take over the payments," I told the loan officer. "But I don't want him to know." It cleaned out most of my retirement savings as a down payment to bring the loan current. Every month since then, $2,847 came out of my Social Security and your grandfather's small pension. I lived on whatever was left, which wasn't much, but it was enough. It had to be. Michael thought his refinancing had gone through. I let him believe it. When he married Jessica 2 years ago, I let her believe it too. Let her redecorate with expensive furniture and talk about their investment and building equity. Let her brag to her friends about how financially successful they were. The irony wasn't lost on me, sitting in my tiny apartment that night, making tea with a tea bag I'd already used twice. The woman who called me too much drama was living in a house paid for by my quiet sacrifice. The next morning, I called the bank. "Cheryl, honey, it's Rose Patterson. I need to cancel that automatic payment for the Morrison property." There was a pause. Cheryl had been handling my account for 3 years now. She knew that payment never missed a month. "Are you sure, Mrs. Patterson? That's a big payment to stop." "I'm sure, dear. Effective immediately." I hung up and made my coffee. It was Christmas Eve, and I was alone, but I felt lighter than I had in years. The first call came at 7:23 a.m. on Christmas Day. I was watching the morning news, enjoying the quiet, when my phone started ringing. Michael's name on the caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. By noon, there were 6 missed calls. By evening, 11 more. I listened to none of them. The voicemails started frantic. "Mom, call me back, there's some kind of mistake with the mortgage." Then they got angry. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this isn't funny." Then desperate. "Please, Mom, just call me back. Please." On the last voicemail, I could hear Jessica in the background, her voice shrill and panicked. Words I won't repeat, but the gist was clear. They couldn't make a $2,847 mortgage payment. Their budget was stretched thin with her shopping habits and dining out 3 times a week. The house they thought they owned free and clear was about to be foreclosed on, and they had no idea how it had happened. On the 3rd day, I answered. "Mom." Michael's voice cracked like he was 13 again. "Thank God. What's happening with the house?" "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "The bank called. They said our mortgage payment bounced, but we don't have a mortgage payment." We paid the house off years ago, remember? I sipped my tea. Did you? There was silence. Then, quietly. Mom, what did you do? I stopped paying your mortgage, Michael. The mortgage I've been paying for 8 years. The one that kept you and the babies in that house when you were going through your divorce. More silence. Then I heard him crying. Actually crying. I didn't know, he whispered. I swear to God I didn't know. I know you didn't, honey. How much? How much have you paid? I did the math in my head. About $270,000, give or take. The sound he made wasn't quite a sob, wasn't quite a gasp. It was the sound of a man's world crashing down around him. Jessica's been telling everyone we paid off the house early, he said through his tears. Her family, our friends, the neighbors. She talks about how smart I am with money, how successful we are. And all this time you've been living on borrowed grace, I finished gently. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this. You don't fix it, Michael. You learn from it. 3 weeks later, on a cold January morning, my doorbell rang. Michael stood there with Emma and Tommy, all 3 of them holding handmade cards and looking properly ashamed. Where's Jessica? I asked. Gone, Michael said simply. Turns out being married to a man whose mother holds the mortgage wasn't quite the social status she was looking for. I invited them in for hot chocolate. Michael sold the house. Even with his decent job, he couldn't afford the payments, and my savings were nearly gone anyway. He bought a smaller place, one he could actually afford, and we started new traditions. Christmas dinner at his house, and I bring the ingredients instead of paying the mortgage. Those 18 missed calls taught us all something valuable. Love isn't about silent sacrifice or what you can provide in secret. It's about honesty, respect, and letting people face the consequences of their choices. Emma and Tommy know exactly who their grandmother is now. Not the woman who was too much for Christmas, but the woman who loved them enough to make sure they had a home, even when nobody knew it. And me. I learned that sometimes the best gift you can give someone is letting them grow up. Sometimes a smile and a canceled payment speak louder than years of silent suffering. The phone doesn't ring 18 times in 2 days anymore. When it does ring, it's because they want to hear my voice, not because they need my money. That makes all the difference in the world. Wanting to see what would happen next? Subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up a bit, because this story didn't start with 18 missed calls or a canceled Christmas dinner. It started 8 years ago with a different kind of phone call entirely. It was March 15, 2017. I remember the date because it was the day my world shifted on its axis, though I didn't know it at the time. I was in my kitchen making dinner for one, a simple chicken breast and some green beans, when the phone rang. Mom! Michael's voice was thick, like he'd been crying. Can you come over? I need to talk to you. I'd heard that tone before. It was the same voice he'd used when he was 16 and had to tell me he'd wrecked his father's truck. Scared. Ashamed. Desperate. I'll be right there, I said, already reaching for my keys. The drive to his house took 20 minutes in those days. I'd moved to the senior apartments in Millfield after your grandfather passed, thinking I wanted to downsize, be closer to other people my age. What I really wanted was to be closer to Michael and the grandkids, but I was too proud to say so directly. When I pulled into the driveway of that beautiful 4-bedroom colonial, I could see the foreclosure notice taped to the front door like a scarlet letter. My heart sank. I'd suspected things were bad between Michael and Linda, but I hadn't realized how bad. Michael met me at the door, and Lord, he looked terrible. His hair was uncombed, his eyes were red-rimmed, and he'd lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. Behind him, I could hear Emma crying in her high chair and Tommy's little voice asking for juice. She took half of everything, he said without preamble. Linda. The divorce was finalized yesterday, and she took half of everything. The savings, the checking account, even the emergency fund. She said she deserved it after putting up with me for 7 years. I followed him into the kitchen, where Emma was indeed crying and Tommy was standing on a chair trying to reach something in the cupboard. The sink was full of dishes, there were Cheerios scattered across the floor, and the whole house had that particular smell of overwhelmed single parent, equal parts desperation and baby formula. Sit down, I told Michael, moving automatically to pick up Emma. Tell me everything. The mortgage payment is due in 2 weeks, he said, slumping into a kitchen chair. $3,047. I don't have it. Linda cleaned out the accounts before I even knew the papers were signed. My lawyer says I can contest it, but that'll take months and the bank won't wait. Emma settled against my shoulder, her crying subsiding to little hiccups. Tommy had managed to reach whatever he was after, a box of crackers, and was now systematically dropping them on the floor one by one. "What about your job?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. "They're cutting back. I'm lucky to have 40 hours a week, and with daycare costs." He ran his hands through his hair. "I can't afford daycare, and the mortgage and food, and everything else. I've run the numbers 100 times, Mom. I can't make it work." I looked around that kitchen, at the little handprint paintings taped to the refrigerator, at the growth chart marked on the doorframe showing how Emma and Tommy had grown. This wasn't just a house. This was home. Emma had taken her first steps on the hardwood floor in the living room. Tommy had learned to ride his bike in the driveway. Their friends lived on this street, their school was 6 blocks away, their whole world existed within these walls. "Have you talked to the bank?" I asked. Michael laughed, but there was no humor in it. 3 times. They were very sympathetic, very understanding, very clear that sympathy doesn't pay mortgages. Emma had fallen asleep in my arms, her little body warm and trusting. Tommy had moved on from dropping crackers to licking them and putting them back in the box. Under normal circumstances, I would have stopped him. These weren't normal circumstances. "What are your options?" "Bankruptcy. Foreclosure. I can probably rent a 2-bedroom apartment somewhere. Try to start over." His voice cracked. "The kids will have to switch schools. Leave their friends. Tommy's finally settled in at preschool, and Emma's just getting comfortable with her babysitter." I made my decision right then, though I didn't tell him. Maybe I should have. Maybe things would have been different if I'd been honest from the start. But mothers protect their children, even when their children are grown men with children of their own. "It's what we do." "Let me make some calls," I said instead. "See what I can find out." That night, I went home and spread all of my financial papers across my kitchen table. Your grandfather had been a careful man, a methodical man. He'd left me with a small pension from his years at the factory, our Social Security, and a decent amount in savings. Not wealthy by any means, but comfortable. Enough to live on, with a little left over for emergencies. This qualified as an emergency. The next morning, I called First National Bank and asked to speak to someone about the Morrison property. That's when I met Mrs. Helen Kowalski, the loan officer who would become my co-conspirator in the most expensive lie I've ever told. "Mrs. Patterson," she said in her crisp, professional voice, "I understand you're inquiring about taking over payments on this property?" "That's right. My son is going through a difficult time, and I'd like to help. The loan is significantly behind. We'd need a substantial payment to bring it current, plus proof of income for future payments." I did the math in my head. Bringing the loan current would cost me nearly $30,000, most of my savings. The monthly payments would eat up 2/3 of my fixed income. I'd have to live on about $800 a month after that mortgage payment went out. "That's fine," I heard myself saying. "But I have one condition. My son can't know. As far as he's concerned, his refinancing application went through." There was a pause. "Mrs. Patterson, that's unusual." "I'm sure it is. But that's my condition. May I ask why?" I thought about Michael's face when he told me about the foreclosure notice. About Emma sleeping peacefully in my arms. About Tommy asking for juice with complete faith that someone would give it to him. "Because sometimes love means letting people keep their dignity," I said. Mrs. Kowalski arranged everything. The refinancing paperwork that Michael thought he'd submitted got approved. The loan got transferred to my name behind the scenes. Every month, $2,847 would come out of my checking account automatically. Michael would get statements showing his payments were current, never knowing those payments were coming from his mother's shrinking bank account. I moved to a smaller apartment. Told Michael I wanted to simplify my life, that the maintenance on the senior community was included in the rent. I started shopping at the discount grocery store, buying generic brands and day-old bread. I learned to make 1 chicken breast last 3 meals. I gave up cable television, downgraded my phone plan, and stopped buying new clothes. It was worth it. Every month when that payment went through, it was worth it to know Emma and Tommy were sleeping in their own beds, in their own rooms, in the only home they'd ever known. For 6 years it worked perfectly. Michael got back on his feet financially. He got a promotion at work, then another one. He started dating again, cautiously at first, then with more confidence. The kids thrived. Emma started piano lessons, Tommy joined Little League. They had birthday parties in the backyard and sleepovers with friends from school. And then Michael met Jessica. I should have seen the red flags from the beginning, but love makes you blind, and hope makes you stupid. Jessica was beautiful, I'll give her that. Blonde hair, perfect teeth, one of those laughs that sounds like silver bells. She worked in marketing for some big company in the city, drove a BMW, and always looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. At first she was charming, sweet to the kids, deferential to me, obviously smitten with Michael. She'd bring wine to family dinners and compliment my cooking. She'd ask Emma about school and cheer at Tommy's baseball games. I wanted to like her. I tried to like her. The wedding was small but elegant. Jessica insisted on hiring a professional photographer, a florist, and a caterer, even though it was just immediate family. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment," she said when Michael worried about the cost. "We can't put a price on memories." I bit my tongue. I'd learned that memories could be quite expensive indeed. After the honeymoon, things changed gradually. Jessica started making suggestions about the house. The living room furniture was dated. The kitchen cabinets were so 80s. The master bathroom needed a complete renovation. "We have equity in this house," she'd say, running her manicured fingers along the countertops. "We should be using it to increase our investment." Each time she said equity, I felt a little stab in my chest. The only equity in that house was the equity of a 74-year-old woman's broken heart and depleted savings account. The renovation started small. New paint in the living room. Updated hardware on the kitchen cabinets. But Jessica had expensive taste and big dreams. Soon they were talking about granite countertops, hardwood floors, a master suite addition. "We can afford it," Jessica would say when Michael hesitated. "Our mortgage is so low, we're practically living for free." If only she knew. I watched my savings account dwindle month by month. The automatic payment never missed, never bounced, but each month there was less cushion. I started using coupons religiously, shopping sales, buying clothes from thrift stores. When my refrigerator died, I bought a used one from the classified ads rather than a new one. When my car needed repairs, I learned to live with the rattling noise rather than fix it. Meanwhile, Jessica was posting pictures on social media of their beautiful home renovation and talking about their smart financial decisions. She started a blog called Building Wealth in Your 30s, where she wrote about the importance of paying off your mortgage early and investing in your home's value. The irony was suffocating, but it was the Christmas shopping that really got to me. Jessica had strong opinions about gift giving. "The children need to learn that Christmas isn't about material things," she'd say, right before buying herself a $1,000 handbag or booking a weekend spa retreat. When I'd show up with presents for Emma and Tommy, nothing extravagant, just things I thought they'd enjoy, Jessica would make pointed comments about setting appropriate expectations and not overwhelming children with too many gifts. Last Christmas, she actually returned half the presents I'd bought, claiming they were too advanced for the kids. She exchanged them for store credit and bought herself a cashmere scarf instead. I know because Emma told me, innocently, that Mommy Jessica had gotten a new scarf that looked just like the color of the sweater I'd bought for Emma. Still, I paid the mortgage. Every month, $2,847, like clockwork. Because Emma and Tommy didn't deserve to suffer for their stepmother's vanity, and Michael didn't deserve to lose his home because of his mother's pride. But pride has a way of building up over time, like pressure in a kettle. And sometimes, when the pressure gets too high, something has to give. The something that gave was me, standing in that driveway on December 23rd, listening to my son tell me I wasn't welcome for Christmas because I was too much drama for their perfect family celebration. The family celebration happening in the house I'd been paying for. In the home I'd saved when no one else could. Among the granite countertops and hardwood floors that my retirement savings had made possible. Jessica wanted a quiet family Christmas without drama. She was about to get more drama than she'd ever bargained for. Because sometimes when you build a house of cards, all it takes is one small breath to bring the whole thing tumbling down. And after 8 years of holding my breath, I was finally ready to exhale. The phone would ring 18 times in 2 days, but first, it was time for them to learn what their beautiful, equity-rich, mortgage-free home really cost. It was time for the truth. Wanting to see what would happen next? Subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. So there I was, back in my little apartment on the evening of December 23rd, making myself a cup of tea and thinking. Really thinking for the first time in years. My apartment wasn't much to look at. a one-bedroom in the Millfield senior community with beige walls and carpet that had seen better decades. The furniture was mostly hand-me-downs from the old house, pieces that had been good quality once upon a time, but now showed their age. The kitchen table where I paid my bills every month was scarred from years of use, and the chair cushions were flattened from my nightly ritual of sitting there, calculating and recalculating my meager budget. But it was quiet, peaceful even. No one telling me I was too much drama. No one making me feel like an intruder in a house I'd been keeping afloat for 8 years. I sat in my worn recliner, your grandfather's favorite chair, the one I couldn't bear to get rid of, and sipped my tea. Earl Grey, the cheap store brand, but it tasted just fine when you weren't paying someone else's mortgage. Outside my window, I could see Mrs. Chun hanging Christmas lights on her balcony, and Mr. Rodriguez walking his little terrier under the streetlights. Normal people living normal lives, not sacrificing their golden years to support ungrateful family members. That's when it hit me. What was I doing? I was 74 years old, living on crackers and day-old bread, driving a car that made concerning noises, wearing clothes I'd had for a decade. Also, my son and his wife could live in a house they thought they owned and redecorate it with my money. I looked at my checkbook, sitting on the side table where I'd left it after paying my own bills earlier that week. Rent, $650. Utilities, $89. Groceries, $200 if I was careful, $150 if I was very careful. Phone, $35. Car insurance, $78. That left me with roughly $300 a month for everything else. Clothing, medical expenses, car repairs, any small pleasure that might make life worth living. Meanwhile, Jessica was posting pictures on Instagram of their date nights at restaurants where appetizers cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I picked up my phone and dialed the number I knew by heart. First National Bank, this is Cheryl speaking. Cheryl, honey, it's Rose Patterson. Mrs. Patterson, how are you? I was just thinking about you. Your payment for this month went through perfectly as always. Cheryl had been handling my account for 3 years now. She was a sweet girl, probably around 30, with a picture of her 2 kids on her desk. I'd seen it during one of my visits to the bank when I'd needed to adjust something about the automatic payment. She always asked about my health, remembered that I liked peppermint tea, and never made me feel like a bother even when I came in with questions about my statements. I'm doing just fine, dear. But I need to make a change to my account. Of course. What can I help you with? I took a deep breath. Once I said this, there would be no taking it back. No more pretending. No more secret sacrifices. The house of cards I'd been building for 8 years was about to come tumbling down. I need to stop the automatic payment for the Morrison property mortgage. The one for $2,847 that comes out every month. There was a pause. A long pause. In the background, I could hear the quiet hum of the bank. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the mundane sounds of business being conducted. Mrs. Patterson, Cheryl said carefully. Are you sure? That's a substantial payment. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, sweetie. I just need to stop that payment. Effective immediately. I can certainly do that for you. But I have to ask, just to be sure. You understand that when we stop this automatic payment, the Morrison mortgage will go into default if no other arrangements are made. I thought about Michael's face in the driveway. About Jessica's dismissive wave as she closed the door on me. About Emma and Tommy, probably inside right now, wondering where Grandma Rose was and why she wasn't staying for their Christmas Eve tradition of hot chocolate and Christmas movies. I understand completely, I said. All right then. I'll stop the automatic payment right now. You should receive a confirmation letter in the mail within a few business days. Thank you, Cheryl. You've always been so helpful. Is there anything else I can help you with tonight, Mrs. Patterson? I looked around my little apartment, at the second-hand furniture and the empty refrigerator and the stack of bills on my table. For the first time in 8 years, next month's budget would include an extra $2,847. I could buy groceries without counting every penny. I could fix my car. I could maybe even take that trip to see my sister in Florida that I'd been putting off for years. No, dear. I think that takes care of everything. After I hung up, I made myself another cup of tea and settled back into your grandfather's chair. I'd done it. After 8 years of silent sacrifice, of watching my savings evaporate month by month, of eating generic food while Jessica posted pictures of her gourmet meals, I'd finally done something for myself. It felt strange, liberating and terrifying at the same time. Like stepping off a cliff and hoping you'd grow wings on the way down. I went to bed that night and slept better than I had in months. Christmas Eve morning dawned clear and cold. I woke up at my usual time, 6:30 a.m., a habit left over from 50 years of making breakfast for your grandfather before he went to work, and made my coffee. The good stuff this time, not the store brand. Why not? I could afford it now. I was settling in to watch the morning news when my phone rang. 7:23 a.m., according to the clock on my cable box. Michael's name on the caller ID. I looked at the phone, took a sip of my coffee, and let it ring. The voicemail notification popped up a few minutes later, but I didn't listen to it. Instead, I turned up the volume on the television and watched a segment about Christmas traditions around the world. In Germany, they had Christmas markets with hot mulled wine and handmade gifts. In Mexico, families gathered for elaborate feasts that lasted all day. In my little apartment in Millfield, an old woman was learning how to put herself first for the first time in decades. The phone rang again at 8:15, then 9:02, then 9:45. By noon, I'd received 6 more calls. The voicemail notifications were piling up like snow, but I ignored them all. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the grocery store and bought exactly what I wanted. Real butter, not margarine. Name-brand cereal. A small prime rib roast for my Christmas dinner, because why shouldn't I have prime rib if I wanted it? The woman at the checkout counter smiled at me. "Having a nice Christmas Eve? The best one I've had in years," I said, and meant it. When I got home, my phone was ringing again. Call number 7. I unpacked my groceries, marveling at how it felt to buy food without checking the price per ounce on every item, and let it ring. By evening, I'd received 11 more calls. 18 total for the day. The voicemail icon on my phone looked angry, blinking red and demanding attention I wasn't ready to give. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and around 8 o'clock, after I'd eaten my Christmas Eve dinner of Chinese takeout, another luxury I'd given up years ago, I finally started listening to the messages. The first one, from 7:23 a.m., was pure confusion. "Mom, it's Michael. Listen, I got a weird call from the bank about our mortgage. They're saying there's some kind of problem with the payment, but that doesn't make sense because we don't have mortgage payments. Can you call me back? I'm sure it's just some kind of mistake, but I want to get it sorted out before Christmas." His voice was calm, slightly annoyed at the inconvenience, but not worried. Not yet. He still believed in the fiction I'd created, still thought his refinancing had gone through all those years ago. The second message from 8:15 had a different tone. "Mom, I really need you to call me back. The bank is being weird about this mortgage thing, and they won't talk to me because apparently the loan isn't in my name. I don't understand what's going on. Jessica thinks maybe there's been some kind of identity theft or something. Just call me, okay?" I could hear the first notes of panic creeping into his voice. The bank had probably told him the loan was in my name, but he was still trying to make sense of it, still looking for a reasonable explanation that didn't involve his mother lying to him for 8 years. By the third message, from 9:02, the panic was more pronounced. "Mom, where are you? I've been calling and calling. The bank says the mortgage payment for this month bounced, but I don't understand how that's possible. They say the loan is in your name, but that can't be right. Can you please just call me back and help me figure this out? I'm starting to freak out here." The fourth message was where things got interesting. I could hear Jessica in the background, her voice sharp and demanding, though I couldn't make out the words. Michael sounded strained. "Mom, I really need to hear from you. The bank manager called and said they need to speak with you about bringing the account current. Jessica is, well, she's pretty upset about this whole thing. She thinks maybe you co-signed on something and forgot to tell us. I don't know what to think. Please call me." The fifth message was pure desperation. "Mom, please. I don't understand what's happening. The bank says if we don't make a payment by January 15th, they're starting foreclosure proceedings. But we don't have $3,000 just lying around. Our budget is based on not having a mortgage payment. I don't know what to do. Where are you?" By message 6, Jessica had apparently gotten hold of the phone. "Rose, it's Jessica. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it's not funny. Michael is having a panic attack, and the kids are asking questions we can't answer. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Now fix this mess and call us back." Her voice was tight with barely controlled fury, but there was something else underneath it. Fear. The realization that their perfect life might not be so perfect after all. Messages 7 through 10 were variations on the same theme. Michael pleading, Jessica demanding, both of them trying to understand how their mortgage-free house suddenly had a mortgage they couldn't afford. But it was message 11 that really got my attention. Jessica had clearly taken over phone duty, and the mask of civility had completely slipped. Listen here, you manipulative old witch. I don't know what sick satisfaction you get from jerking us around, but this ends now. We have a life here, a home, and I'm not going to let you destroy it because you're bitter about not being invited to Christmas dinner. You want to play games? Fine. But don't expect us to come crawling back begging for your help. We'll figure this out without you. The language that followed would indeed make a sailor blush. Jessica called me names I hadn't heard since junior high, questioned my mental health, my motives, and my fitness as a grandmother. She accused me of financial manipulation, of trying to control their lives, of being a vindictive old woman with nothing better to do than cause trouble. It was fascinating, really. Here was the woman who'd been living in my house, redecorating it with my money, building equity that didn't exist, calling me names for having the audacity to stop paying for her lifestyle. The 12th message was Michael again, and he was crying. Actually crying. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry about Jessica. I'm sorry about Christmas. I'm sorry about everything. I don't understand what's happening, but I know you're not vindictive or manipulative. You're my mother, and you've never done anything but try to help me. If you've been paying our mortgage all this time, God, Mom, how much money have you spent on us? How could I not know? How could I be so stupid? His voice broke completely at the end, and I had to turn off the phone. I couldn't listen to my son cry, not even when he'd brought it on himself. But I made myself listen to the rest of them. Jessica continued to leave increasingly unhinged messages, alternating between threats and promises, trying to bargain and then resorting to outright abuse. Michael's messages got more and more desperate as the reality of their situation sank in. The last message, number 18, came at 11:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve. It was Michael, and he sounded broken. Mom, I know you're there. I know you're listening to these. I figured it out. The refinancing that went through right after my divorce. That was you, wasn't it? You've been paying our mortgage this whole time. 8 years. Jesus, Mom. 8 years of mortgage payments. How much did that cost you? How much of your retirement did you give up for us? I'm sitting here in this house, this beautiful house that I thought I'd managed to save, and I realize I didn't save anything. You did. You saved us, and I didn't even know it. And Jessica, God, the things she's been saying about you. The things she's been saying tonight. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to apologize for something this big. But I'm going to try. I'm going to make this right somehow. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry it took me losing everything to remember that. I sat in your grandfather's chair for a long time after that, holding my silent phone and thinking about the ripple effects of truth. For 8 years, I'd protected Michael from the consequences of his financial struggles, and in doing so, I'd created a lie so big it had swallowed all of us. But lies have a way of demanding payment, with interest. And after 18 missed calls and 48 hours of radio silence, that payment was finally coming due. The phone had stopped ringing, but I knew it was only temporary. Tomorrow would bring new calls, new pleas, new attempts to rebuild what we'd all lost. The question was, did I want to answer? For the first time in 8 years, I wasn't sure I did. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. I let the phone ring 16 times on Christmas Day before I finally answered it. It was 3:17 in the afternoon, and I'd been sitting in your grandfather's chair, watching It's a Wonderful Life on television and eating leftover Chinese food straight from the container. The phone had been ringing on and off all morning. Michael, then Jessica, then Michael again. I'd turned the ringer off around noon, but I could see the screen lighting up every few minutes, Michael's name flashing like a distress signal. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. Not because I felt sorry for them, exactly, but because the uncertainty was eating at me. I needed to know what came next. Hello, Michael. The sound that came through the phone wasn't quite a sob, wasn't quite a gasp. It was the sound of a man drowning. Mom. Oh God, Mom, thank you for answering. I was afraid you'd never. He was crying. My 42-year-old son was crying like he was 8 years old again and had fallen off his bicycle. It broke something in my chest that I'd thought was already broken. Take a breath, sweetheart, I said, surprised by how calm my own voice sounded. Just breathe. I can't. Mom, I don't know what to do. Everything's falling apart. Everything. In the background, I could hear shouting. Jessica's voice, shrill and furious, mixed with the higher pitches of Emma and Tommy asking questions that apparently no one could answer. "Where are you right now?" I asked. "I'm in the garage. I had to get out of the house." She's been screaming for 2 days straight. At me, at the kids, at anyone who'll listen. She's demanding to know how we're going to make a $2,847 mortgage payment when our budget is already stretched thin with her. He stopped, seeming to realize what he was about to say. With her what, Michael? Her spending. The online shopping, the dinners out 3 times a week, the spa days, God, Mom, I never really added it up before. We spend more on restaurants in a month than most people spend on groceries. And all this time, I thought we could afford it because we didn't have a mortgage payment. There was a crash in the background, followed by Jessica's voice screaming something about financial incompetence and your crazy mother. "Michael," I said quietly, "I need you to tell me something, and I need you to be honest. Did you know about the mortgage payments?" The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then barely a whisper. "No. I swear to God, Mom, I had no idea. I thought, after the divorce, when you helped me with the paperwork for the refinancing, I thought it went through. I've been getting statements every month showing the payment was current. I never questioned it. I never looked deeper. I believed what I wanted to believe." "What did you want to believe?" "That I was a good provider. That I'd managed to save my kids' home. That I was financially responsible and successful and..." His voice cracked. "That I was the kind of man my father never was." That hit me like a physical blow. Michael's father had walked out when Michael was 12, leaving behind a pile of debts and a family that struggled to make ends meet for years. I'd worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, and Michael had sworn he'd never put his own children through that kind of instability. "Oh, sweetheart. I'm just like him, aren't I? Letting someone else pay my bills while I pretend to be successful. What kind of man does that? What kind of son lets his 74-year-old mother sacrifice her retirement to pay his mortgage?" "The kind who didn't know," I said firmly. "Michael, I made the choice not to tell you. I made the choice to let you believe the refinancing went through. That's on me, not you. But I should have known. I should have questioned it. All these years, Jessica's been telling everyone how smart I am with money, how we paid off our house early, how successful we are. Her family, our friends, the neighbors, everyone thinks we're this financially stable couple who made all the right decisions." Another crash from inside the house, louder this time. Jessica's voice was getting hoarse from screaming, but she wasn't slowing down. "What is she saying exactly?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Michael was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with shame. "She's saying it's all your fault. That you manipulated us, that you set this up so you could control our lives. She thinks you planned this whole thing, paying the mortgage secretly so you could hold it over our heads. And what do you think?" "I think..." He took a shaky breath. "I think you're the most generous, selfless person I know, and I've been taking advantage of that generosity without even realizing it. I think you've been living on practically nothing so my kids could have a stable home, and I've been too stupid or too selfish to see it." "You weren't stupid, Michael. You were trusting. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because I trusted Jessica too, and look where that got us." "What do you mean?" Another pause. In the background, I could hear Jessica still ranting, her voice growing more and more unhinged. "She's been lying, Mom. About everything. About her job, about her income, about our finances. Do you know what she told her parents last month? She told them we were thinking about buying a vacation home because we were doing so well financially. She showed them pictures of houses in Myrtle Beach that cost $500,000. My blood ran cold. "Michael." "Her blog, Mom. That stupid blog she writes about building wealth in your 30s. She's been writing articles about how we paid off our mortgage in record time, how smart we were to refinance when rates were low, how people our age need to be more strategic about debt management. She has 8,000 followers who think she's some kind of financial guru." I closed my eyes. The weight of the lie I'd created was staggering. It hadn't just affected Michael and the kids. It had rippled out into their community, their social media presence, their relationships with friends and family. Jessica had built an entire identity around a success story that didn't exist. "It gets worse," Michael continued. "She's been using our supposed financial success to get credit. New credit cards, a line of equity on the house." "What do you mean a line of equity?" "She took out a home equity loan 6 months ago. $50,000. Said we needed to diversify our investments, that keeping all our wealth tied up in real estate wasn't smart. She used the money to start some kind of online boutique that's already failing. The room started to spin. Not only had I been paying their mortgage for 8 years, but Jessica had borrowed against equity that didn't exist. They weren't just looking at losing their home. They were looking at owing money on a house that was about to be foreclosed on. Michael, this is serious. If the bank forecloses and you still owe on the equity line. I know. I talked to a bankruptcy attorney this morning. We're looking at losing everything and still owing money we don't have. The shouting from inside the house suddenly stopped. In the eerie quiet that followed, I could hear Jessica's voice, no longer screaming but talking rapidly, frantically. She was on the phone with someone. Who is she calling? I asked. Everyone. Her parents, her sister, her friends from work. She's trying to do damage control, spinning some story about how this is all a misunderstanding, how we're actually fine financially but there's been some kind of bank error. And people believe her? Some do. Others are starting to ask questions. Her sister called this morning asking if we needed money, and Jessica had to pretend everything was fine while I was literally Googling bankruptcy attorneys in the next room. The garage door opened, and I could hear Jessica's heels clicking on the concrete. There you are, she snapped, her voice hoarse but still venomous. Get off the phone. We need to figure out how to fix this mess your mother created. Jessica, stop, Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. Don't you dare tell me to stop. Do you have any idea what this is going to do to my reputation? My blog? My business? I've built everything on our financial success story, and now what am I supposed to tell people? That my husband's been lying about our mortgage for 8 years. I wasn't lying, Michael said weakly. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. You were perfectly happy to let everyone think you were some kind of financial genius while your mommy paid the bills behind the scenes. I'd heard enough. Jessica, I said, loud enough that I knew she could hear me through the phone. What? This is Rose. I can hear you. There was a moment of silence then. Good. Maybe you can explain to me what kind of sick game you've been playing with our lives. It wasn't a game. It was a choice. A choice to help my son keep his home and his children stable after his divorce. A choice I made without asking for anything in return. Without asking for anything in return, you held financial control over our lives for 8 years. You made us dependent on you without us even knowing it. I made you comfortable, I said quietly. I made it possible for you to redecorate that house with granite countertops and hardwood floors. I made it possible for you to eat out 3 times a week and take spa weekends and start a blog about how financially successful you are. All while I lived on Social Security and day-old bread. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Smaller. The reality of what I'd said was sinking in. That's not, you chose to do that. No one asked you to sacrifice your retirement. You're right. No one asked me. I did it because I loved my son and my grandchildren, and I wanted them to have stability. But you know what? No one asked you to build an entire public persona around money that wasn't yours either. The house equity. What equity, Jessica? You borrowed $50,000 against a house that was heading toward foreclosure. That's not equity. That's debt built on a lie. Michael's voice cut through the tension. Oh God. The neighbors. The Hendersons, the Johnsons. We've been telling them for years that we own the house outright. Last month, when the Johnsons were struggling with their mortgage, you told them they should follow our example and pay extra toward principal. That's different, Jessica said, but her voice was shaky now. Is it? How many people have you given financial advice to based on our fake success story? How many of your blog followers have made decisions based on lies? They weren't lies. They were aspirational. They were lies, I said firmly. And now Michael is sitting in his garage on Christmas Day, talking to bankruptcy attorneys while his children wonder why Mommy's been screaming for 2 days. Emma's voice suddenly piped up in the background. Daddy? Is Grandma Rose on the phone? Can I talk to her? My heart clenched. Through all of this, the lies, the financial disaster, the screaming matches, my granddaughter just wanted to talk to her grandmother. Not now, sweetheart, Michael said gently. Daddy's handling some grown-up business. But it's Christmas, Emma said, her voice small and confused. Why isn't Grandma Rose here? Why is Mommy Jessica so mad? Out of the mouths of babes. Why indeed? Michael, I said, put Emma on the phone. Mom, I don't think. Put her on the phone. There was some shuffling, then Emma's sweet voice. Hi, Grandma Rose. Are you coming over today? We saved some cookies for you. Hi, baby girl. I'm not coming over today, but I want you to know that Grandma loves you very much, okay? Okay, but why can't you come over? Daddy looks sad, and Tommy's been hiding in his room because Mommy Jessica keeps yelling. Jessica grabbed the phone. Emma, go inside. Now. But I want to talk to Grandma Rose. Inside. Now. I heard Emma's footsteps retreating, and then Jessica was back on the line. Don't you dare try to manipulate my children, she hissed. Those aren't your children, Jessica. They're Michael's children. And they're my grandchildren. And right now, they're scared and confused because the adults in their lives have been living a lie for so long they don't know what truth looks like anymore. The truth. Jessica's voice rose again. You want the truth? The truth is that you're a manipulative old woman who can't let go of her son. You orchestrated this whole thing so you could swoop in and be the savior whenever it suited you. If that were true, I said calmly, don't you think I would have revealed the truth years ago? Don't you think I would have used it to get invited to Christmas dinner? That stopped her cold. Michael's voice came back on the line, shaky but clearer than it had been. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Always. How much money have you spent on us? Total. Over the 8 years. I did the math in my head, though I'd done it hundreds of times before. $2,847 times 12 months times 8 years, plus the initial payment to bring the loan current. About $304,000, give or take. The silence was deafening. Even Jessica had stopped talking. $300,000, Michael repeated, his voice barely a whisper. Mom, that's most people's entire retirement. It was most of mine, I admitted. What have you been living on? Social Security. Your father's small pension. I get by. You get by. Jessica's voice cracked. On what, $1,200 a month? About that, yes. Jesus Christ, Michael breathed. Mom, what have I done to you? You didn't do anything, sweetheart. I made my choices. But now you need to make yours. What do you mean? I looked around my little apartment at the second-hand furniture and the stack of bills on my table and the empty refrigerator. Then I thought about Emma and Tommy, scared and confused in a house that was about to be taken away from them. I mean, it's time for all of us to stop living lies and start living truth. Even when truth is harder than fiction. How do we do that? We start by admitting what we've lost. And then we figure out what we're going to do about it. But here's the thing, sweetheart. Sometimes people need to fall down before they can stand up straight. And after 8 years of propping them up, it was time for Michael to learn how to stand on his own. Even if it meant watching him fall first. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. 3 weeks after Christmas, on a cold January morning when the snow was falling soft and steady outside my little apartment window, my doorbell rang. I was in my kitchen making real coffee, the good stuff I could finally afford again, and reading the newspaper I'd started buying now that I had an extra $2,847 in my monthly budget. The headlines were the usual January fare, diet tips, financial planning advice, stories about people starting fresh in the new year. How fitting. The doorbell rang again, followed by a small voice calling. Grandma Rose? Are you home? Emma. I set down my coffee cup and walked to the door, my heart doing something complicated in my chest. Through the peephole, I could see Michael standing on my doormat, looking thinner than he had 3 weeks ago, his hair slightly unkempt. On either side of him stood Emma and Tommy, bundled up in their winter coats, each holding what looked like handmade cards. All 3 of them looked sheepish as could be. I opened the door and was immediately enveloped in the January cold and the scent of Emma's strawberry shampoo as she launched herself at my legs. Grandma Rose, we missed you so much. Tommy, more reserved but equally earnest, pressed his card into my hand. We made these for you. Daddy helped with the spelling. I looked down at the construction paper cards, clearly crafted with 7-year-old and 5-year-old hands. Emma's was covered in glitter and had a drawing of what I assumed was meant to be me, though the figure had purple hair and was wearing what looked like a ball gown. I'm sorry, Grandma Rose was written in careful block letters across the top. Tommy's was more practical, less glittery, with a drawing of a house and stick figures holding hands. Thank you for helping us, was written in his careful kindergarten penmanship. Can we come in? Michael asked quietly. It's cold out here and we need to talk. I stepped aside and let them into my little apartment. Emma immediately started examining everything with the intense curiosity of a child in a new place, while Tommy gravitated toward the window where he could watch the snow falling. Coffee? I asked Michael, though I was really buying time to figure out what I was feeling. Relief? Anxiety? A strange mixture of both? Please. I busied myself in the kitchen, aware that Michael was taking in the modest surroundings. The second-hand furniture, the small television, the stack of bills on my kitchen table that I no longer had to calculate and recalculate to make ends meet. "Mom," he said as I handed him the mug. "I know I should have called first, but I wasn't sure you'd want to see me." "Why wouldn't I want to see you?" He gestured vaguely around the apartment. "Because of all this. Because of what I let happen to you while I was living in a house you were paying for." Emma had found my small collection of books and was flipping through a cookbook, asking if I knew how to make the cake on page 43. Tommy had discovered that my window overlooked the apartment complex's small playground and was providing commentary on the other children playing in the snow. "Where's Jessica?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. Michael's mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Gone. Packed up and moved back to her mother's house faster than you could say prenup. Turns out being married to a man whose mother held the mortgage wasn't quite the social status she was looking for." "And how are you handling that?" "Honestly? It's been the most peaceful 3 weeks I've had in 2 years." He took a sip of his coffee and looked around my apartment again. "She left the day after our phone call. Said she couldn't be married to someone who'd been living a lie, which was rich coming from someone who'd built her entire public persona around that same lie." "What about her blog? Her financial advice empire?" Michael laughed, but there was no humor in it. "She shut it down. Posted some vague message about taking time to reassess her priorities and disappeared from social media completely. I heard from a mutual friend that she's telling people we had irreconcilable differences about family obligations." "Family obligations. That's one way to put it." She also tried to take half of everything in the divorce filing, which was hilarious since everything was either mortgaged to the hilt or didn't actually belong to us in the first place. Emma looked up from the cookbook. "Daddy, are you talking about Mommy Jessica? She was really mean to you those last days." "Out of the mouths of babes, indeed." "Yes, sweetheart, but we don't need to worry about that anymore," Michael said gently. Then, to me, "The kids have been asking about you constantly. Emma wanted to know why you weren't at Christmas, and Tommy kept asking if you were mad at us." "And what did you tell them?" "The truth. That Daddy made some mistakes, and that sometimes grown-ups need time to figure things out." I sat down in your grandfather's chair, and Emma immediately climbed onto my lap, as if the past 3 weeks of separation had never happened. Tommy remained by the window but kept glancing over at us, clearly wanting to join but unsure if he should. "Tommy," I said, patting my other knee, "there's room for both of you." He didn't need to be asked twice. With both grandchildren settled against me, I looked at Michael. "So what happens now?" "Well, I sold the house." That surprised me, though it probably shouldn't have. "Already?" "Had to. Even with my decent job, I couldn't afford a $2,847 mortgage payment, and after 8 years of payments, your savings were nearly gone anyway. The bank was willing to work with us since you'd never missed a payment, but the math just didn't work." "What about the equity loan Jessica took out?" Michael's jaw tightened. "That was a mess. Turns out she'd forged my signature on some of the paperwork, so I was able to get out from under most of it. The online boutique she started with the money failed completely. She'd spent most of it on inventory that never sold and a fancy website that got maybe 12 visitors a month." "So you sold the house to pay off the loans?" "And had enough left over for a down payment on a smaller place." "A much smaller place." Emma looked up at me. "Our new house has 2 bedrooms instead of 4, but Daddy says that means Tommy and I get to share, which is like having a sleepover every night. And there's a little backyard," Tommy added. "Not as big as the old one, but big enough for a swing set." "Where is it?" I asked. "About 10 minutes from here, actually. In that little development near the elementary school. It's older, needs some work, but it's mine. Really mine. No mortgages, no loans, no secrets." There was something different in his voice when he said that. Pride, maybe. The kind of pride that comes from actually earning something rather than just believing you deserve it. The kids seemed to be adjusting well. Better than I expected. Emma was worried at first about leaving her friends, but it turns out half her class lives in the new neighborhood anyway. And Tommy's excited about being able to walk to school when he starts first grade next year. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, Emma playing with my necklace and Tommy pointing out interesting birds at the feeder outside my window. It felt natural, peaceful in a way that family gatherings at the big house never had. There was no undercurrent of tension, No Jessica making pointed comments about appropriate gift amounts or proper child-rearing techniques. Mom, Michael said finally, I need to ask you something. What's that? How much money do you have left? In savings, I mean. I'd been expecting this question. Enough. Not what I had before, but enough to live comfortably. The house sale helped. I insisted you pay back what you could, even though you tried to refuse. It wasn't nearly enough to make up for what you spent. It was enough to give me some breathing room. And now that I'm not making mortgage payments every month, I can actually afford groceries and the occasional luxury. Like real coffee instead of the store brand. I smiled. Like real coffee instead of using the same tea bag 3 times. Emma looked up at me with wide eyes. You use tea bags 3 times? Sometimes 4, if I was being really careful with my money. That's sad, Grandma Rose. It was a little. But it was worth it to make sure you and Tommy had a safe place to live. Tommy turned from the window. Daddy told us you paid for our house. For a really long time. I did. Why didn't you tell us? Because grown-ups sometimes make decisions they think are best for the children they love, even when those decisions are complicated. Emma frowned, working through this concept. But wouldn't it have been better if Daddy knew? Then he could have said thank you. You're right, sweetheart. It would have been better if everyone had known the truth from the beginning. Michael leaned forward in his chair. Mom, I've been thinking about that a lot over the past 3 weeks. About why you didn't tell me, and why I didn't ask more questions when the refinancing supposedly went through. And what did you conclude? That we were both protecting each other from truths we thought the other couldn't handle. You thought I couldn't handle knowing you were sacrificing your retirement for us. I thought I couldn't handle admitting that I needed that much help. And now I think honesty is less comfortable, but a lot more sustainable. He was right, of course. The truth had been painful for all of us, but it had also been freeing. No more secrets, no more lies, no more elaborate fictions about financial success that didn't exist. Emma slid off my lap and started exploring my small kitchen, opening cupboards with the casual entitlement of a beloved grandchild. Grandma Rose, do you have any cookies? I might have a few store-bought ones. Would those be okay? Can we make some together? Daddy bought ingredients at the store, but he's not very good at baking. I heard that, Michael said, but he was smiling. And she's not wrong. I burned 3 dozen sugar cookies last week trying to recreate your recipe. Well, we can't have that. Tommy, would you like to help make cookies too? Both children nodded enthusiastically, and soon we were gathered around my small kitchen table, measuring flour and sugar and arguing about whether chocolate chips or sprinkles made better cookies. It was while we were waiting for the first batch to bake that Michael brought up Christmas. Mom, I know we missed it this year, but I was wondering, would you be willing to start a new tradition? What kind of tradition? Christmas dinner at my new house. Nothing fancy, nothing elaborate. Just family, good food, and honesty about what we can and can't afford. What about groceries? I know money's tight now. That's the thing. I was hoping maybe you could help with the groceries instead of the mortgage. As partners, not as whatever the old arrangement was. I looked at him, this man who'd been my little boy not so very long ago, learning how to be a father and a provider without the safety net he hadn't even known he'd had. I think that sounds perfect, I said. Emma looked up from the cookie dough she'd been sneaking tastes of. Does that mean we get to have Christmas with Grandma Rose? Every year, Michael promised. For as long as she'll have us. What about presents? Tommy asked practically. Do we still get presents? Of course you get presents, I said. But maybe not quite as many as before. Is that okay? Both children nodded solemnly, as if they understood that this was part of the new reality we were all learning to navigate. The cookies finished baking, and we sat around my small table eating them while they were still warm. Emma told me about her new school friends, Tommy showed me the loose tooth he was excited about, and Michael filled me in on his job and his plans for fixing up the new house. It was better than any Christmas dinner we'd ever had in that big house with the granite countertops and hardwood floors. It was real. As they were getting ready to leave, bundling back into their winter coats, and collecting the leftover cookies I'd insisted they take home, Emma hugged me tight around the waist. Grandma Rose? Yes, sweetheart? I'm glad you're not too much drama anymore. I laughed, remembering Jessica's words from that Christmas Eve that felt like a lifetime ago. I'm glad too, baby girl. Michael lingered in the doorway after the children had run ahead to the car. Mom, thank you. For everything. For the 8 years of payments, yes, but also for stopping them. For making me face the truth about what kind of life I was really living. You're welcome. But Michael? Yeah. Don't thank me for letting you fail. Thank me for believing you were strong enough to get back up. He smiled, and for the first time in years it reached his eyes. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. Drive carefully. After they left, I sat in your grandfather's chair and looked around my little apartment. It wasn't much, but it was honest. The furniture was secondhand but comfortable. The bills on my table were manageable, and the refrigerator was stocked with food I could actually afford. Those 18 missed calls had taught us all something valuable. Love isn't about what you can provide or how much you sacrifice in silence. It's about respect, appreciation, and being honest with each other about both your strengths and your limitations. Emma and Tommy now knew exactly who their grandmother was. Not the woman who was too much for Christmas, but the woman who'd loved them enough to make sure they had a home, even when their father didn't know it. But more importantly, they knew I was the grandmother who'd loved them enough to let that home go when holding on to it meant living a lie. And me? Well, I learned that a smile and a canceled payment can speak louder than years of silent suffering. The best gift you can give someone, it turns out, is the opportunity to discover their own strength. Sometimes you have to stop being the safety net before people learn how to fly on their own. 3 weeks later, on a snowy Sunday in February, we had our first real Christmas dinner. Michael cooked a chicken instead of a turkey. It was what he could afford, and it was delicious. I brought the vegetables and dessert, purchased with money I could actually spare. Emma and Tommy gave me handmade gifts instead of store-bought ones, and they were perfect. We said grace before we ate, thanking God for second chances, honest conversations, and the kind of love that's strong enough to survive the truth. It was the best Christmas dinner I'd ever had. Sometimes, sugar, you have to stop being the safety net before people learn how to fly on their own. And sometimes, when you're brave enough to let them fall, you discover they're strong enough to soar. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and like this video to continue listening to this type of story daily, and also to appreciate this community too. I would like to know the country in which you are listening to this story. Which country is that? Please comment below.